A warm welcome to today's talk. It's Thursday, the 11th of January. Now, last week there was published some really concerning research.
Oh no! I guess we should all be really, really afraid. Oh, except that normal people and none of us really study the research that comes out of China. So I guess in order for us to be afraid, the people that want us to be afraid would need some sort of middleman to get some sort of paper and sort of go over it and sort of explain how we should be really, really afraid. I guess they'd need someone like that. Where could they find anyone like that? Where could they find someone like that who's a nurse pretending to be a doctor? Good morning. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Nurse Dr. John Campbell's channel, Nurse Dr. John Campbell is a nurse who has been promoting the vaccines heavily until everyone had sort of taken them. And then Nurse Dr. John Campbell decided that, hey, hang on a minute, these things might be dangerous, even though people sent him this information years before it was clear that these things were dangerous. He sort of turned around, and now he's the sort of establishment mouthpiece. He's got millions of subscribers on YouTube and hundreds of thousands of subscribers on Rumble. And he is the voice. He's the approved opposition. He is the Dr. Nurse John Campbell who stands up against tyranny. And man, he is sticking it to the man. And in case you hadn't noticed, I'm not buying any of this. I think that this guy is, he's placed where he is for a reason, and there's almost no point watching his channel whatsoever unless there is some mileage to be had in these sort of channels like Russell Brand, Dr. Nurse John Campbell. There is some mileage in these channels from when you watch them, you can sort of understand, oh, what is the establishment, what is the deep state, what is the enemy, whatever you call them, what do they want us to think? And this video is one of the best examples of that, because they're obviously planning another pandemic. They're obviously going to do this again. You know, anyone can see that, right? So the point of them doing it again is the first one was kind of a dress rehearsal, in my opinion. You know, they wanted to find out who's going to react in what way and, you know, have a little run through. And then they're going to come back with a way more deadly disease because they're going to ramp it up by 20, right? So this one's going to be really deadly. And in order for this to work, what they need is for you to be really afraid again, because this is how they locked you down in the first place, right? They made you really afraid. And people were so afraid that they started behaving like Nazis to their neighbors and stuff, and they started, you know, families started falling out with each other because the spirit of fear was everywhere. And this is part of God's judgment on the earth. You know, people are going to keep getting sick and more sick and more sick, and it's going to ramp up and it's going to ramp up. So if you're right with God, you've got nothing to worry about. You can just chill out and enjoy, you know, this period of human history. But regular people who don't have faith in God, who are terrified of these sort of things, you know, they're going to be really afraid. But in order for them to be really afraid, you need a middleman, you know, because we're not going to read the papers out of China, you know, and they also think that everyone's stupid. That's not them. So they need a nurse who's a doctor for the purposes of his YouTube channel to come out and sort of break down why you should be really afraid. And the problem with this whole thing is Dr. Nurse John Campbell is a really, really terrible actor. I'm sure he's an excellent nurse, and I'm sure he's an even better nurse pretending to be a doctor, but he's not a very good actor. And throughout this entire video, he's going to try and pretend like, well, I really don't want you guys to be afraid here, but constantly just trying to ramp up the fear as much as he can about this new brain disease that's going to kill everyone inevitably. And the second piece of acting he does, he's not very good at, is he's constantly like, well, and I'm completely against this, and I really don't think these people should be doing this. It's absolutely outrageous what they're doing here. But at the same time, he's doing their job for them by just breaking down exactly what they're doing and really sort of magnifying the fear propaganda. Anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Nurse John Campbell.
From China. What the researchers did was they got a virus from a pangolin. That's these charming little creatures that are so abused throughout Eastern Asia particularly. They took a virus from the pangolin and they cultured it in cells in the laboratory. And they then infected mice with it, and it killed all of the mice that had infected through brain infection. So they've generated this new virus that kills 100% of mice it's infected with, but it gets worse.
Killed 8 mice. 8 mice, by the way. Just to spoil the end of the video, they killed 8 mice. But it gets worse, right? 8 mice. These people in a lab in China, they killed 8 mice. Dude, I can kill 12 mice by myself, okay? I'm not in a laboratory. I don't have any pathogens, right? I can kill 15 mice if you give me an afternoon and a spade, you know? I can kill that many mice. So that's basically what happened here. Some people in China killed 8 mice in a lab, but it gets worse, okay? Be more afraid.
Of mice it's infected with, but it gets worse because the mice that were infected were humanized mice. Now, these are called transgenic mice. In other words, they were given some human genes, and they were given human ACE receptor genes that were expressed by the mouse. So these are essentially human ACE receptors in genes. And it was a coronavirus from the pangolin, and it killed 100% of the mice that were infected. And these are the things that they are jiggling around with in laboratories. This is absolute madness.
Bro, they killed 8 mice. Okay, they killed 8 mice. I've seen that many mice killed on an episode of Looney Tunes. You know, 8 mice. These are the things that they're jiggling around with. You know, it's like, guys, this is a scandal. And even though they're mice, this guy is going to convince you for the rest of the video that they might as well have been human beings. You know, he'll forget the fact that they're mice. It'll just be like, well, this is going to kill everyone on the planet. You know, this is Neil Ferguson FC for the rest of the video. You know, the fear just gets ramped up from here. They've killed 8 mice in a lab. So basically, this thing is going to kill everyone. And John is so against this. Nurse Dr. John Campbell, this is how he became a nurse doctor. Okay? Is cracking cases like this. You don't become a nurse doctor without going to medical school for over 25 years.
And it needs to be banned yesterday, as far as I'm concerned. The only reason I can see for doing this kind of research, the only reason I can see is as biological weapons. I really can't see anything else. So that sounds melodramatic.
It does, you know. It sounds like a worst-case scenario. It sounds like something that everyone should be terrified of. It sounds like we should be ramping up the fear, Nurse Dr. John.
The researchers say it's because they're worried about spillover infection. But of course, they created the virus in the first place, in their cell lines in the laboratory. So it's not a virus that's in nature to spill over into human populations. So we've got a situation where they created a virus or generated a virus. It's not that they synthesized it together, it just evolved in their cell cultures in the lab.
Do you see the way he won't actually go all the way with his hypothesis? He wants you to be as afraid as you would be if this was a biological weapon that they created in the lab. But somehow he also knows that they didn't do it on purpose. You know, it's like, well, the only thing this could be is a biological weapon and it's been designed to kill as many people as possible. But they didn't do it on purpose. They didn't do it on purpose. But you should be as afraid as if they did.
They killed 100% of the humanized mice. Brain virus disease. Now, they don't say whether they've tested it on humans or not, but given that it was affecting human ACE2 receptors, I think the probability is it would cause viral brain death in the vast majority of human beings that it infected.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. Even though this is currently only killed 8 mice, I think it's fair to say that this is definitely going to kill every single human being on the planet 100% of the time. I think that's something, that's good nurse doctoring.
This research to me is just an existential threat to humanity. It really has to be stopped.
8 mice. 8 dead mice.
Because the record of labs leaking all over the place, you were just reminded of a sieve.
No, you're not. When someone says they're doing an experiment in a lab, I'm not immediately thinking of a sieve. You know, that idea has been planted in your head by Nurse Dr. John Campbell.
Anyway, let's give you the details and you can make your own mind up. I'm not going to... I've told you what I think, but this is the paper.
See, now these are the parts where John Campbell, he's just not a good enough actor. I'm sure he's a terrific nurse doctor, okay? But he's not a good enough actor to pull this kind of stuff off. It's like he's just told you you should think this, and you should think this, and you should think this. And then he tries to be like, oh, but I tell you what, but don't let me make your mind up for you. I'm just completely impartial. Don't let me tell you what to think. It's like, you just spent 5 minutes telling us exactly what to think from the position of a nurse doctor. You know, it's not like he's setting this up as in, I'm just giving my opinion like I do. I'm just saying what I think. This guy's saying he's one level above you. He's not just a person. He's a nurse doctor. You know, he's a doctor nurse. Okay, he's this incredible doctor who's really a nurse who has all this incredible knowledge, and he's telling you should be so afraid, but then he can't help himself, and he has to remember what the deal is. He has to remember what his role is, and he has to remember to be like, oh, don't make it too obvious. Oh, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me tell you what to think, even though I've just told you should be so afraid.
So lethal infection. So it kills 100% of the mice that it infects, but remember, these are humanized mice with human genes expressing human type ACE2 receptors, which of course is the receptor that the coronavirus binds into, but this is a different coronavirus, of course.
So even though it kills mice, you should be as afraid as if it's killing people, okay?
It's mice bred up with humans, which we can seriously question the ethics of this as well. What are the ethics of putting human genes into mice? I think that's an open question. Let me know what you think. I'm pretty I can see why they do it. They're still mice, but they're expressing human proteins, human receptor sites. Let me know how you feel about that. I feel somewhat uncomfortable about that, I must say.
It's a shame you didn't feel uncomfortable about promoting the AstraZeneca vaccine until all those people died or had serious heart failure, isn't it? But you're human genes in mice. Man, this guy's furious. AstraZeneca vaccine. Oh, let's have a party.
Published on the 4th of January. There's the links. Check it out for yourself. SARS coronavirus 2 related pangolin coronavirus, GX, we'll just call it GX from now on, shall we, can cause 100% mortality in human ACE2 transgenic mice.
Wow, I didn't know that. Is scary, dude. If I was a human ACE2 transgenic mouse, I should be afraid. But I'm not, John.
100% is one more than 99. It meant it killed them all.
Wow. It's clear how this guy became one of the leading nurse doctors in the country, isn't it? What an incredible mathematical brain on this guy. I reckon his YouTube channel traffic is organic. I reckon he's just such a personality. He's a very, very easy to listen to guy, isn't he? Very friendly, nice chap, hilarious.
The relative isolates were cultured in 2020 and 2017, so they were culturing this back in 2017. Now, early passage through the cells isolated was actually a cell culture adapted mutant. So, in other words, what happened was that this mutant that caused 100% lethal brain disease evolved, if you like, while they were passing it through various cell cultures to grow it in the lab. And then they thought, oh, hey, presto, we've got this 100% lethal virus. So that's how it came about. The paper doesn't say they deliberately constructed it. They probably didn't deliberately construct it, because it says in the paper that it was just through passage through cell culture.
Do you see how the stuff he says doesn't really stack up? It's like he's all waxing lyrical about, oh, these terrible people are inventing this virus and they shouldn't be doing it, and they're testing it on mice and they're putting human genes in there, which I'm against, and all this stuff is terrible and these people are absolutely terrible and what they're doing is crazy and it's really dangerous, but they definitely didn't do it on purpose because it says in the paper they didn't. And, you know, you're more than happy to believe that they're creating a super virus as a biological weapon, but they definitely wouldn't lie.
But then they found this incredible virus that they wanted to study, and they want to study further, which is even more concerning. Anyway, we assessed its pathogenicity of the humanized and the human ACE receptor 2 mice. So mice with human ACE receptors in them. We found that this GX clone can infect the mice. So it can infect the humanized mice. Therefore, it is immensely probable that it would infect humans very readily.
Oh, yeah, I can see the science in that, yeah. I'm convinced. I'm ready to lock down, John. I'm ready to lock down. Let's put masks on 4-year-olds, man. 8 mice are dead. And Nurse Dr. John Campbell, who's one of the leading nurse doctors in the country, says that it's good enough for him, that 8 mice are dead to assume that every single human being on the planet is at risk from this thing and will probably die of a horrible brain injury.
As far as I can tell. Dealing with a dangerous virus. High viral loads detected in both the lungs and the brain tissue. Now, the fact that high viral loads were detected in the lungs means that the virus would have been breathed out by the mice. It was also detected in the nose. So we're dealing with a virus here that kills the brain, kills the organism through brain damage.
Thanks for touching your head, John, because we didn't know where the brain was unless you'd have done that. Thank you so much. I can see why so many people are subscribers. You really get stuff that unless you were a nurse doctor, you just wouldn't know.
But grows in the mouth and the lungs, therefore can spread. So we're dealing with a transmissible, respiratory, transmissible, presumably droplet and aerosol, transmissible virus that can kill the brain.
So a brain virus that's airborne that can definitely kill 100% of human beings because it killed 8 mice.
This is what they're playing around with. The infection resulted in 100% mortality in these humanized mice. 100% humanized mice. We surmise that the cause of death may be linked to the occurrence of late brain infection. So it's caused by brain infection, they believe.
Thank you so much for underlining brain infection there, John, and explaining what it meant. I would have no idea that brain infection meant brain infection if you hadn't underlined it with a blue pen. This guy really is one of the best nurse doctors I've ever seen. If I needed a nurse doctor, I would go to him.
All the mice that were infected with the live virus succumbed to infection within 7 to 8 days post-inoculation. It is quite possible. I'm not interested in scaremongering. It's just...
Oh, yes, you are. You spent the whole video doing it. This is quite possible. I'm not interested in scaremongering here. Notice at this point in the video, he hasn't mentioned that this is 8 mice in the study. He hasn't mentioned it. He's made you feel like, oh, there's this disease and it's practically escaped the lab already because the lab is like a sieve and these mice are basically human beings and 100% of them are all dead. And did you know that 100% is more than 99?
It is possible that a virus that is readily spread, like SARS coronavirus 2, could have a massively higher case fatality rate, infection fatality rate. That is quite possible and quite frightening.
I'm not interested in scaremongering here. But this worst case scenario that I'm playing out is definitely possible and it is quite frightening. I'm not interested in scaremongering, but this is frightening. I don't want you to be afraid, but be afraid. I don't want you to be afraid, but this is frightening. I don't want you to be afraid, but this is terrifying. Such a great actor.
It is certainly possible, especially if these viruses being selected specifically for that purpose. So if you were a military planner, you might think, oh, this is an interesting virus. It's spread through the air. We could just drop it off in country X from country B or wherever it was. And it would just kill everyone for us. Then we can just move in. All the buildings will be nice and empty.
Please remember, this guy isn't trying to scare you.
It's really quite terrifying, that the potential here.
Sort of an idiot tries to pretend like, listen, I'm not trying to scaremonger. I'm not trying to scare everyone. And then uses like the word terrifying, frightening like 6 times in the next 15 seconds.
All the mice that were infected died within 7 to 8 days, rendering 100% mortality. Now, 5 days post-infection, they got a decrease in body weight, so they're starting to sicken after 5 days. Relatively long incubation period for these viruses. 7 days post-infection, the hair started standing on end, piloerection, hunch posture. That indicates to me something wrong with the nervous system. If you've got this hunch posture, it's a nervous system thing, I think. Sluggish movements also indicates nervous system involvement. Eyes turn white. They don't. Excuse me. They don't say why the eyes turn white. It doesn't sound very good. That's all we know. That's all it says in the paper. They infected 8 mice, 8 with humanized ACE2 receptors, 8 mice inoculated with inactivated virus, 8 mice mock infected. So it was a good, reasonably conducted study. Small numbers, of course, but still 100% of these ones died. Every single one of them.
Say, like, listen, I'm not trying to scare you, but look, 100% of these mice died, even though there's only 8 of them, which is a great sample. He actually says it's like, which is a reasonably sized. It's small numbers, of course. Small numbers, of course. 8 mice. John, 8 mice. That's what you're trying to whip everyone into this sort of death frenzy about? 8 mice? And then when he goes, every single one of them. Like, it's 8 mice, John. I've killed more than 8 mice by accident. Skateboarding.
Right. So they dissected some mice after 3 days and after 6 days. They did a quantitative analysis of the viral RNA and the amount of the T. That's basically the quantitative amount of the virus in the tissues. Significant amount of RNA virus is in the brain, of course, because it kills the brain. The lungs, so they could breathe it out. Turbinate in the nose. Eyes, so it could be in the tears. And trachea, so it could be breathed out as well. This just screams out to me respiratory infective virus. That's why this is particularly frightening. It could so easily get out of the lab because we know it's happened before.
Not trying to scare you, remember? Not trying to scare you. Just sort of leaning into the camera and being like, this is why this is particularly concerning, because I don't know if you realize, but this disease X that John's talking about here is basically exactly like the coronavirus too, but it's really deadly, and it's out of the lab, and it's coming to get you, and 100% of the mice are dead, even though there's only 8. Can you see how he's setting the scene perfectly for the next pandemic? And when they come out with disease X and they roll it out, he'll actually have the balls to be like, well, I told you guys about this. I was worried about this. I tried to terrify you about this, back in January. So I'm a good guy. And everyone will be like, oh, this Dr. John Campbell, he's really on the level. He's a truth warrior. He tried to scare us all about this before they were ready to release it. So it's more effective when they do. Check out the closing section here, where John's done enough scaremongering at this point at the end of the video, and he moves on to give you the sort of, it's all hopeless and I'm so sad and upset about it.
What can we do about this as individuals? Well, if enough people complain, I guess maybe something will be done. Maybe there'll be a government inquiry or something. It really is incredible that we have people in positions of power that can play fast and loose with your lives, your parents' lives and your children's lives. But that's the situation we're in. And hopefully now that we've studied this, you and me are in better contact with reality than we were before, which is always good. We want to live in the real world, not in a matrix.
Balls on this guy. Spends 20 minutes trying to get you to a point of near suicide because somebody has apparently killed 8 mice. Setting the scene for Pandemic 2. Setting the scene for the terror. It's an airborne brain virus that kills 100% of everyone. Every single one. And that's not all, And then he gets to turn around and be like, there's pretty much nothing we can do about it, but at least you're watching Nurse Dr. John Campbell's channel and you know what's really going on. We don't want to live in a matrix. You don't want to be fed the establishment news. You don't want to know what the establishment wants you to know. You want to tune into Nurse Dr. John Campbell. Sure.